Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar hosts BIMSTEC Foreign Ministers in New Delhi for talks aimed at boosting cooperation among the group's South Asian and Southeast Asian member states. New UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Joe Biden push for an immediate Gaza ceasefire and release of hostages after negotiations take place in Qatar. And NATO accuses China of enabling Russia to build weapons to attack Ukraine. Beijing warns the bloc against provoking a confrontation. The Kremlin says NATO's military infrastructure is inching closer to its borders. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and his counterparts from the BIMSTEC member states are taking part in a two-day retreat in New Delhi. The Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, also known by its acronym BIMSTEC, brings together 7 countries of South Asia and Southeast Asia for multifaceted cooperation. India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar and Thailand are its members. As the summit began, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the discussions will revolve around connectivity, institution building and trade, among others. Minister Jaishankar said that for India, BIMSTEC represents the intersection of its Neighbourhood First and Act East policies and Sagar doctrine. Sagar is an acronym for Security and Growth for All in the region.
There are long-standing goals such as capacity building and economic cooperation that have acquired a new urgency. BIMSTEC represents the intersection of the Neighbourhood First outlook, the Act East policy and the Sagar vision. Our discussions in the first part will revolve around connectivity, institutional building, cooperation in trade and business, collaboration in health and space, digital public infrastructure, capacity building and societal exchanges, as well as weighing on the merits of new mechanisms.
Amrit Pal Singh joins us from New Delhi for more. Amrit, what can you tell us about BIMSTEC? Why is its profile rising by the day, and is it happening at the expense of SAARC?
Well, yes, you can say it is happening at the expense of SAARC because SAARC, for a variety of reasons, has gone into a moribund phase. It's the kind of role that it was envisioned to play is not, the grouping is not playing that. BIMSTEC on its, but apart from that, BIMSTEC does stand on its own feet, or the countries who have come together are trying to see that this grouping stands on its own feet, because these 7 countries at present who are part of the grouping sit at a very important geostrategic location. Very important sea lanes of the world pass through here. It's an area of interest for very important countries around the world, those from the region and those from the wider Indo-Pacific. So there is this grouping has a great security dimension, is important for regional stability, does impinge on global security also in the wider Indo-Pacific. So therefore it's increasingly becoming important for the members of this grouping, because they are all countries from the global south, developing countries. So it makes sense for them to sort of come together work out, as the External Affairs Minister said, because of regional and global developments. Look within, strengthen the mechanisms within to find solutions within the grouping to help these nations, because their concerns are common. They are touched by the common seas here. So in that sense, that is why the relevance and importance of BIMSTEC and the need to for it to have a shared vision for growth and development. Ramesh?
Amrit, a significant development for BIMSTEC this year was the implementation of its charter, which provides a legal and institutional framework for the group. Tell us more.
Well, the charter was adopted at the Colombo summit, which though took place in a virtual format, came into effect on the 20th of May this year. So this is the first foreign ministers meeting since the charter came, and the External Affairs Minister in his opening remarks did mention this morning about the charter, saying that it gives us a sort of institutional framework to take the grouping further and realize its visions and vision and aspirations. Also, it opens up for the avenues for greater participation of other key players at whatever level, at an observer level, or at or increasing members in the future. Because BIMSTEC, as it stands today, though it's been there for 27 years, wasn't in this form. Countries came and joined at later stages. So it does leave the door open for future expansion of countries and cooperation with countries where interests intersect. For India, as the External Affairs Minister said, it clearly represents an intersection of its three important pillars of its foreign policy. That's the neighborhood first, Act East policy, and also the Saga vision to have a secure, fair and free, open, inclusive region which cooperates amongst itself for capacity building, for infrastructure building, and building, leveraging each other's strengths to build a framework for realizing more development for its people. Ramesh?
Amrit, thank you. Appreciate it. In other news, NATO's 32 members have pledged unwavering support for Ukraine. The bloc's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, has said that NATO allies had collectively identified China as a decisive enabler of Russia's war.
In the way that this is a strong message from NATO allies that we really want Ukraine to join, and that we are working with Ukraine to make that happen. Words are important, and words creates expectation, creates an agenda, defines an ambition. But of course, as important as words, the language in the declaration is actually what we then have agreed to do. So in many ways, action speaks at least as loudly as words. So I think you need to understand the declaration with a reference to irreversible path to membership together with what we do. China provides dual-use equipment, microelectronics, a lot of other tools which are enabling Russia to build the missiles, to build the bombs, to build the aircraft, to build the weapons they are using to attack Ukraine.
The Kremlin said that it was watching as NATO's military infrastructure moved closer towards Russia's borders, and that Moscow would need to act to contain the Western military alliance. A Russian news agency cited Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov as saying that NATO's goal was to suppress Russia and that the alliance's actions represented a serious threat to Russian national security. The United States and Germany said in a joint statement on Wednesday that Washington, D.C. will start deploying long-range fire capabilities in Germany in 2026 in an effort to demonstrate its commitment to NATO and European defense. For its part, China on Thursday criticized a draft communique from the NATO summit, which described it as a decisive enabler of Russia's war effort in Ukraine as biased and full of provocations. Speaking to journalists at a press briefing, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jin said NATO hyped up China's responsibility with regard to the Ukraine crisis. The spokesperson accused NATO of playing up the tensions in the Indo-Pacific region with full of Cold War mentality and belligerent rhetoric. Beijing put forward a 12-point paper more than a year ago that set out general principles for ending the conflict but did not get into specifics. And Nick Harper joins us from Washington, D.C. for more. Nick, would you say that it was NATO's most pointed remark yet on China?
Yeah, Ramesh, undoubtedly, these are the strongest words that we have seen to date from NATO coming out of this draft communique put together by those more than 30 members. I think it's very interesting to note that they have increased their language against China in recent years. But I think going as far as they have here, calling China a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine really amps up the tensions between the Western military alliance and China. NATO also saying they have deep concerns about China's actions, saying they're worried about the no-limits partnership between China and Russia, and also China and North Korea, and saying that China cannot enable the largest war in Europe in recent history without this negatively impacting its interests and reputation. We're also seeing much more cooperation and coordination between alliance partners in the Indo-Pacific and NATO as a direct result of that perceived aggression by China in the region, in particular aggression in the South China Sea. So in just over an hour's time, we will have a special meeting between alliance partners, 4 of them, Australia, New Zealand, Japan and South Korea, meeting with NATO members to specifically look at the Indo-Pacific region and to look at China's actions in there. I think NATO making it very clear with this communique, with this upcoming meeting, that they are looking at security not just in Europe with the war in Ukraine, but also the impact on security in the Indo-Pacific region as well, and the part that China plays in that.
That said, the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. comes just a few months before the U.S. presidential election. Is Europe worried about the impact the election result could have on U.S.'s support for Ukraine and NATO if Biden loses to Trump?
Well, yes, and that is something that Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, has been asked about. It's what some of the European leaders here in Washington, D.C. have also been asked about. No one has directly come out and said that they are worried about a Donald Trump presidency, but that is certainly at the back of everybody's minds. Donald Trump has a NATO skeptic, as someone who has said that he would massively withdraw funding for Ukraine. There is that concern that with a Donald Trump presidency, there could be significant impacts in Ukraine's ability to fight its war against Russia, but also the leadership of the NATO alliance without the United States a part of it, or at least particularly skeptical of its actions. But I think there are also concerns about what a second Biden presidency might look like. He is under incredible pressure at the moment. His every action, his every word is being watched because there are significant concerns about his ability, his mental fitness to serve a second 4 years. Many Democrats within his own party are urging him to reconsider that re-election bid, to drop out of the race now. So it's not just a second Donald Trump presidency, but a second Joe Biden presidency that is worrying many within the alliance at this time.
Indeed. All right, we'll leave it at that. Nick Harper in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And still to come on DD India Live. India's top court adjourns hearing to 18th July in a case related to a nationwide examination for admission to undergraduate course in medicine. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets economists and experts in preparation for the country's national budget 2024.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think All dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. To West Asia now, where civilians continue to flee Gaza city, even as the Israeli military says its troops have completed its 2-week operation in Gaza's Shajaya district and have withdrawn from there. Israel says it destroyed 8 tunnels that contained weapons and communication equipment and encountered a terrorist cell leading to close combat. Britain's newly elected Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the special relationship between Britain and the United States is stronger than ever. He met US President Joe Biden at the White House during the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. The two leaders held a discussion on the possibility of an immediate Gaza ceasefire, which would include the release of hostages and humanitarian aid into Gaza. And joining me from Tel Aviv is my colleague Sarah Coates. Sarah, what's the latest on the fighting in Gaza?
Hello there, Ramesh. You mentioned these evacuation orders that were issued by the Israeli military on Wednesday. That affects some 300,000 people in Gaza City. Leaflets were dropped telling them to move along so-called safe corridors south, although people on the ground say they simply have no safe place left to go. Now, we are hearing from a number of sources on the ground that even though the IDF says it's pulled out of Shajaya neighbourhood, that heavy fighting is continuing in certain pockets in the north of the Gaza Strip, but also in the south. The Israeli military released a few hours ago video of a strike on an area in Rafah, that's the area down on the border with Egypt, saying that it targeted Hamas fighters that were stationed there and that had fired some 5 rockets into Israeli territory just an hour before that. So as you can see, really coming out of these pictures and coming out of all these reports from the ground, heavy fighting is continuing as the ceasefire and hostage release talks do continue in Doha, Ramesh.
Sarah, what is the situation like at Israel's border with Lebanon?
It is extremely dangerous. A little earlier today, a number of drones were shot from southern Lebanon into Israeli territory. Hezbollah has come out to claim this latest drone attack, saying it targeted a new Israeli base in the north of Israel. One person has been critically wounded. A number of others did sustain injuries as well. Now, in response, Israel has been hitting so-called Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. And we did talk about these ongoing ceasefire hostage negotiations. It was only yesterday that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, he actually came out to say that if indeed a ceasefire is to take place in Gaza, then Hezbollah will stop firing into Israeli territory. But this may not be enough to actually stop Israel from actually going into Lebanon. We do know, of course, that this ground plan for battle has actually been approved by the Israeli military. And what Israel really wants to do here is return residents to the north, restore this very terrible security situation in Israel's north. You do need to remember there are more than 60,000 internally displaced people on the Israeli side of the border, some 90,000 Lebanese displaced on that side of the border. So what Israel wants to do is to actually push these Hezbollah fighters further north, back behind the Litani River. And this is, of course, another reason why one of US President Joe Biden's top advisors, Brett McGurk, is here in the region today. He's right now meeting with Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant in Tel Aviv. And we do have a very short readout from that meeting that is ongoing. Gallant's office says that the two discussed the agreement to release hostages, with also an emphasis on securing measures to prevent weapons smuggling into Gaza. So two very active situations here, Ramesh, and one, of course, in the north that the Israelis are really hoping to bring an end to very soon.
Sarah, thank you very much. Sarah Coates reporting there from Tel Aviv. In other news, with a call for a coalition in France after the 7th July legislative election there, left-winger Mathilde Panot said that the president should stop monopolizing power in parliament. Now, this after Macron said in an open letter published in regional newspapers that mainstream parties with Republican values should form a governing coalition. He hoped to pick a prime minister from such a grouping. Macron's centrist camp came second and the far-right National Rally third after third-place candidates from the left and centre withdrew from the runoff to avoid splitting the anti-far-right votes, sinking the far-right's hopes of winning a majority and forming a government after the weekend's second round of voting in a snap election. Macron's Justice Minister Éric Dupond-Moretti defended the president's move, saying that the only way out of the gridlock is for lawmakers from all sides except the far right and the far left to work together.
This is the unbelievable situation in which we found ourselves in. It's a form of legislative takeover that the president is currently doing. So he should stop monopolizing power, admit that he was defeated, and admit that we won.
In preparation for India's National Budget 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi convened a meeting with economists and sectoral experts in New Delhi on Thursday. The meeting, which also saw the participation of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, was a key step as the government gears up to present its comprehensive budget for its third term on the 23rd of July. The pre-budget meeting was attended by notable figures including Niti Aayog Vice Chairperson Suman Berry and other members of the planning body. The gathering was marked by in-depth discussions aimed at shaping the economic direction of the country for the coming fiscal. The budget holds particular significance as it is set to become the first major economic document under Prime Minister Modi's third term. The 13th edition of India Warehousing Show highlighted the Indian government's initiatives to enhance the efficiency and competitiveness of the sector. It had a theme of streamlining tomorrow, transforming supply chains through automation. With more than 250 exhibitors from India and abroad, the show aims to offer an immersive experience and platform where participants can witness the latest technological advancements and live product demonstrations from the biggest national and international companies providing solutions for storage, transportation and logistics customers. The event also showcased a series of expert-led panel discussions, industry talk shows and networking sessions with industry leaders specifically designed to provide valuable insights into the logistics, warehousing and supply chain industries. And now take a look at what else is making news in India. India's top court has adjourned the hearing on a case related to a nationwide examination for admission to an undergraduate course in medicine to the 18th of July. Later, the Central Bureau of Investigation arrested Rocky, the key aide of mastermind Rakesh Ranjan from Bihar in this case. Rocky has been remanded in CBI custody for 10 days. India's Health Minister Jagat Prakash Nadda chaired a virtual discussion on family planning and population control with states and union territories on the occasion of World Population Day in New Delhi. The theme of the event was healthy timing and spacing of pregnancies for the well-being of mother and child. The Chief Minister of the northeastern state of Manipur and Biren Singh distributed benefits to more than 400,000 beneficiaries of government schemes. The initiative aimed to improve the living standards and provide support to residents of Manipur through multiple welfare programs. The Indian government's e-marketplace has got off to a great start in the first quarter of the 2024-25 financial year. The purchases by Indian government agencies was worth around $12 billion. The spire of a Gothic cathedral in the French city of Rouen in Normandy caught fire on Thursday. It's one of the finest cathedrals in France. It was painted several times by an impressionist artist Claude Monet in the 19th century. Visuals showed a dark plume of smoke rising from the spire. The scene was reminiscent of the devastating fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris in the year 2019. In sports news, England will face Spain in the Euro 2024 final on Sunday after the Three Lions secured a late 2-1 win against the Netherlands in Dortmund. Take a look at the next report. Now, just as England and the Netherlands faced each other in the Euro semi-finals, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer watched the game with his Dutch counterpart Dick Schoof on the sidelines of the NATO summit on Wednesday. Starmer shared a video of the two leaders watching the game in Washington, D.C. when England scored the equalizer via a penalty spot. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India Live. You can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download it. And let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.